Welcome back to another very special episode of the Amateur Hour Sports Podcast. Deshaun is joining me once again for part 2 of the greatest moments of the decade list. Yesterday's upload, if you want to go check that out, if you haven't listened to it, you should listen to that first. That's number 20 through 11 on the list. But here we are giving you the top 10 sporting moments of the decade. Let's go right into it.
Okay, well, number 10, and I think this is just a Canadian, this is a huge, tennis moment. It's Bianca Andreescu winning the U.S. Open. Obviously, the month previous, she won the Rogers Cup, which is the Canadian, basically, tennis open. She won that, but the U.S. Open, a Canadian has never, ever won there.
Woman.
Female. And it was just one of those things where...
Maybe. Keep going.
I actually think it's both. I don't think...
Yeah, I'm going to check. That's why I'm going to check.
I don't think a Canadian's ever won there. But when it comes down to it, it's just... it was a crazy, crazy, crazy moment. I remember watching because I'm like, this is the first time anyone's ever been in the final. And she did really well and she got up to a big lead. And then Serena started to come back. And then... Bianca finally got it done, and you can kind of see the effect that it now will have. And
sorry, let me just interject what I was saying. It wasn't only the first Canadian to win at the U.S. Open. It was the first ever Canadian Grand Slam title in the singles. There's been doubles, but no Canadian has won a singles Grand Slam title. I didn't realize how significant that was. That's insane.
And what it does for, Canadians, why I think it's a top 10 moment is just, there's me a whole bunch of people that are now going to go play tennis. A whole bunch of little girls that are now going to be like her. It was just as a country and what we have to offer, it was just a huge moment.
Yeah.
And I don't really think that anyone...
I mean, and not to mention that she beat the greatest tennis player of all time in the final. The Rogers Cup final, Serena Williams retired early. That's when a player is injured. They can't play the whole game. They just call retired in that. So didn't finish the Rogers Cup final. So Bianca Andreescu won by default. But in this scenario, Serena Williams, who by the way is Bianca Andreescu's idol, lost to Bianca Andreescu. And by the way, Deshaun sitting across from me is 21. I am 20. Bianca Andreescu is 19 years old. Already got a U.S. Open under her belt and a Rogers Cup. Unbelievable.
Yeah. It's crazy, and I think as Canadians, it's easy to be proud of the moment because it's something that we've never seen before, and that's why I just think it's a top 10 moment.
And we'll move on. Number 9 on the list is from the World Cup in 2014. The semifinal between Germany and Brazil, the infamous day on July 8th, 2014. Germany took down Brazil in the Maracanã in Rio de Janeiro 7-1. And for a score like that in this age of soccer, in any point in a World Cup is pretty remarkable. But a semifinal in your own home stadium... in your own home country, where, I believe it was, I forget the exact year. Argentina took down Brazil in the Maracanã. I believe it was, I want to say 1978. But nonetheless, Brazil in their home stadium, losing 7-1 to Germany. While in the process, Miroslav Klose became the highest scoring World Cup player of all time, surpassing the great Brazilian Ronaldo, who was commentating that game for a Brazilian network, scoring his 16th World Cup goal.
Dang.
7-1. It was 1-0 after 11 minutes. In the 23rd minute, it became 2-0 with Miroslav Klose. By the 29th minute, it was 5-0. And I remember just sitting in my living room watching that game. You just really did not understand what was going on.
I agree. And Brazil was a team that was supposed to do really, really well as well. And it was just one of those things where I didn't expect what happened to happen. I don't watch a lot of soccer, but when it comes to World Cup and Euro Cup, I always tune in. And just to see how fast all the goals came, and they're showing reactions to the crowd, and they're crying, and it was a crazy moment in soccer that I just don't think that you would see.
Like I was talking about the game against Argentina. It was actually against Uruguay. So it was a 1950 World Cup final. Uruguay beat Brazil 3-1 at the Maracanã. So there were a lot of people were remembering that game, or just talking about how Brazil got more or less embarrassed 3-1 in their home stadium by Uruguay that year. And this was going to be the redemption in 2014, hosting it. They were going to win the World Cup for the first time since 2002. But 7-1 absolutely demoralized in that game. That kind of score does not happen, especially in a game of that caliber. It is ridiculous. It's unbelievable. Like, there were, sure, everybody's seen videos of Brazilian fans crying in the stands. I mean, even the World Cup, the record for most goals by a World Cup player at 16, that Miroslav Klose broke, scored 2 in that tournament, is unbelievable. And but for a consolation goal by Oscar in the 90th minute, it would have finished 7-0. Yeah. So it's incredible. Like, truly, like, this is a sports defining moment of all time, not just a decade.
Yeah. Number 8, we have my favorite NHL player, Austin Matthews, in his first ever NHL game, going and scoring 4 goals against the Ottawa Senators in what I can only describe as like one of the craziest games I've ever watched in my life. Like,
yeah, I agree. That was nuts.
Yeah, like, he scores 1, you're like, okay, like, this kid's gonna be pretty good. And we went back and forth Ottawa as well. We ended up losing the game in overtime, but he was dynamic. He finished everything.
That has never, ever been done in NHL history, by the way. 4 goals first game.
Never.
And, by the way, Austin Matthews does not have a hat trick since.
Yeah.
Just a little fact.
He's the king of 2-goal games now. So, but no, when it comes to Matthews, like, 4 goals, it was something, like, as a Leafs fan, like, we, obviously before that, only made the playoffs once in the previous, like, decade, basically. So to see that, you're like, oh, like, we could actually be really, really good. And obviously we made the playoffs that year for the first time.
There was an incredible culture shift for Toronto hockey stemming from moments like that. That the winning culture took over. Like, we're not just the laughable team of the NHL anymore.
And I personally just think the Matthews 4 goals was it's a huge one. Like, it's something that, like, how many rookies go and score 4 goals a game? You know what I mean? Like, none. Like, that's just what it is. And in his first game on the road, like, his parents were there. Everyone was just going crazy. Like, he couldn't believe that he scored 4 goals that game.
He was pretty calm about it, though.
Yeah.
You see,
he was.
After his 4th goal, he was super calm.
Yeah, he was really, really calm, but it's just something that, like, you can't imagine scoring 4 goals in the NHL. And
your first ever game.
Yeah, first ever game. And, you get all these tweets from all these NHL players. Like, River Luongo was like, oh, like, maybe we should just, let this guy go off on his own. He's going to, like, make the league his own, like, backyard shinny league. So it was a crazy moment in the NHL. Obviously something no one's done before, and I just think that's why that is number 8 on the list.
Number 7 on the list is Leicester City winning the Premier League in 2016. It was a year after their first season back in the Premier League under Nigel Pearson. They looked hopeless to get out of the relegation zone. And an incredible string of form to end off the season saw them escape relegation, ended up finishing in 14th, which looks a lot better than a team who was in the relegation zone for 75% of the season. But in the summer, Nigel Pearson was removed due to some personal reasons, and they brought in Claudio Ranieri. But nobody saw or perceived what was going to happen with Leicester that season. Claudio Ranieri was going to be given a £1 million bonus for every spot they finished above the relegation zone. That's how bad they just wanted to stay up. They ended up winning the Premier League by 10 points, finishing with 81, second place Arsenal on 71 points. This kind of story, I don't think is ever going to happen again, because there is so much money in world soccer that the big teams are never ever going to be perished by a team that almost got relegated the year before. Like I said, this team was predicted to get relegated that season. Winning the Premier League by a fair margin, the moment it happened, Eden Hazard scores, I think it was like 80th minute to make it 2-2 against Tottenham, which clinches Leicester City winning the Premier League. And throughout the entire season, early on, midway through, whatever it was, everybody kept saying, at some point, they're going to fall off. This is not going to be sustained. At some point, they're going to drop off. It's not going to happen. But they just kept going and going and going, winning the Premier League. Like I said, this is never going to happen again. Teams spend way too much money to let a team who go from a relegation battle to the Premier League title. That they won't let it happen. They're too good to let that happen. So, one of the greatest moments in English soccer, world soccer history, never mind just a decade.
Well, at number 6, we have the Jose Bautista bat flip. And why this is a, top 10 moment of the decade is just, for Canadians watching baseball, we literally before then didn't do anything for, since the 93 World Series when we walked it off at home. We did not make the playoffs. We're the laughing stock of the league. We were always, 4th or 5th in our division. And that team, it just came together. We acquired David Price, got Troy Tulowitzki. It was just a lot of big things that were happening that year. And we started to be really successful. And what it came down to is we almost got screwed in the 6th inning of Game 5, which is an elimination game, where Russell Martin is throwing the ball back to the pitcher, and it hit Shin Soo-choo's bats, and basically a run was allowed to be scored. And I play baseball, and I've never, ever seen a play like that in my life.
I think that play made it 6-5 for the Rangers, if I'm not mistaken.
It was, no, it was 3-2. And that play made it 3-2.
Oh.
Yeah, it made it 3-2.
Really?
We won 6-3.
Oh.
Yeah.
Anyways.
But yeah, so in that, I couldn't believe it, and they reviewed it, and, everything was legal, and we were just down. I just felt like that was such a Toronto sports moment where, we're just so close, but there's just always something about our teams where we just can't, push forward. At that point, the Raptors...
It was a very Toronto way of losing.
Yeah,
an elimination playoff game.
Exactly. You know what I mean? It's just...
it was a couple years removed from the infamous 4-1 lead against Boston Bruins.
And we have, the Raptors who just weren't going anywhere in the playoffs as well. So it's just such a Toronto way to lose in the playoffs. And what happens is Jose Bautista comes up. There's a couple guys on. The game, Encarnacion just tied it up 3-3.
Yeah.
But Bautista steps up, hits an absolute bomb, and deservedly just bat flips. And it was
the most rude bat flip of all time.
The most disrespectful bat flip of all time, and he deserved to do it. I'm so happy that he did it, because there's no other player that should have done it for what Joey Bats did for Toronto. And he crushed it. He bat flipped, and that moment, kid literally went to the games with a drawn beard, and everyone bat flips. And if I ever
bat flipping is a thing, more of a thing now in all social media and all baseball because of that.
So it was just one of those things, and I think any Canadian can say that. It's just the Jays winning and that bat flip. Every Canadian knows exactly what you talk about when you talk about that bat flip. you just know, that picture. I had a phone case with the bat flip on it. Like, it was a huge moment.
Yeah.
In the decade.
Number 5 on the list is Tiger Woods' 2019 Masters win. It was his first major since the 2008 U.S. Open. I think a lot of us can remember the video of, the winning putt gets hit and he kind of slams his hat on the ground. How happy he is. And at that point in time, that was his 14th major. The record is 18. We were thinking, well, he's going to break the major record. Most majors won in the PGA Tour. But by how many and when is he going to do it? But did not win one for 11 years. Obviously, went through a lot of personal life turmoil in the early part of the decade. He suffered numerous injuries to his back. But we always wondered if he had the ability to ever come back and win one. And a lot of people would have said no. Yeah. But roared towards the 2019 Masters, got it done. He tied the PGA Tour win record with 82. One more and he has the record. And that's his 15th major win. Like I said, the leader, Jack Nicklaus, was 18 wins on the PGA Tour, 18 major wins. I don't think he'll get there, but just the mountain that Tiger Woods has had to climb over the last decade to be able to get himself in a position to do that. There's a lot of tournaments where he won't even make the first round cut.
Yeah.
But to win the Masters, an unbelievable moment for a real crowd favorite, a guy who has made golf as popular as it is. I know some hardcore golf fans may not agree with that, but look, the popularity of golf over the last couple decades has been largely in part to Tiger Woods. Absolutely. He's a guy that, even if you don't like golf, you like knowing how well Tiger Woods is doing. It's like, I made this comparison to Usain Bolt in track and field, or Conor McGregor in the UFC. Even though you don't necessarily watch the sport, you want to know how these guys did, and he is one of those guys.
I absolutely agree, and I was really surprised to see Tiger win. I literally never thought I'd see the day where
no, especially a major.
Yeah, a major, and he just had all these back, knee injuries, the cheating allegations, the DUIs, he had a lot of stuff.
His life was really falling apart for a while.
He had a lot of stuff going on, and to see what he was able to do, and I agree, is definitely a top 5 moment of the decade. It was just crazy for him to win, and I don't think he'll win again, but it was just really wild to watch. And I guess I'll just go into number 4. Number 4 is I am taking my talents this fall to South Beach. LeBron James with the announcement.
The decision.
It's something, obviously at the beginning of the decade, it's something that had never been done before. No one has ever held a press conference to tell the media where they're going to sign.
It was literally nationally televised. It was July 8th, 2010, a national television event called The Decision, where he would have an interview on ESPN, I believe, and at the end of the interview, he would say where he's going.
Yeah, it was crazy, and, he obviously got everything that he wanted. He got his championships after dragging the Cavaliers along for 7 seasons. But for LeBron, it was just, he got his boy Wade on the team. He got Chris Bosh on the team. They were instant contenders on that team. And that's kind of what he wanted. And I just think that decision was huge because that changed the culture in basketball. And I mean that by the super team culture. And a lot of people do say, Boston is the first ever super team. And I do agree with that to a sense.
But they traded for that team.
Traded for that team, exactly. So trading, you have to give up your assets to get those players. This was the first free agents leaving their teams. Bosh left us. Whatever. Bosh left us.
I would have left it out with Bosh.
I agree, but Bosh left us. I don't know. Bosh and DeRozan, I think they could have been pretty gross. But anyways, Bosh left us. LeBron left Cleveland, and they went there. No strings attached. Miami didn't have to give up anything. They have all their first-round picks.
Went from 47-35, I believe. And then they got to the finals.
Yeah.
Ultimately, LeBron didn't perform that final. They lost to the Mavs, but 2 years in a row, they won the championships. And like you said, big threes are a thing now
Yeah.
because of that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, look at KD. That's a big example of that. So, even Kawhi Leonard over the last year. For big free agents
Yeah.
moving and attracting other big players to join them. That kind of thing. And just to think about the legacy of LeBron by making this decision to go to the Miami Heat. Like, you know, you and me are big advocates of this guy's the GOAT. This decision, out of, I think there was 6 teams in for him. Because of the decision he made, he put himself in a position to become the greatest basketball player of all time. And he did it through this. All of it comes from this moment.
Yeah, I agree.
And absolutely a decade-defining moment because LeBron is this decade in basketball.
Yes.
And this moment caused that to happen right at the start of the decade. Number 3 on the list. Very early again in 2010. On February 28th, 2010, Sidney Crosby's overtime winner, the golden goal against the U.S. in the gold medal game of the Vancouver Olympics. This sent shockwaves throughout the entire sporting world, especially in Canada. U.S. tied it up 2-2, I believe, in the last minute of the game. And then in overtime, Joe McGinley slides it over to Sidney Crosby, slides in and scores the golden goal.
Yeah.
Monumental moment in Canadian history especially that it was in overtime. It also equaled Canada for the record for most gold medals in an Olympic Games held on home soil. I think it was a Winter Olympic record with 14. So because of that, or it might have broken the record because of that, but I know that 14 was the record at the time, might still be the record. But just more importantly, that goal to, you know, the golden child of Canadian hockey, of all hockey really, one of the best players of all time, scoring such an important goal after a really bad tournament, to be fair. But nobody ever talks about how bad Sidney Crosby was in that tournament because he scored the golden goal.
Yeah. I agree with you. And, man, watching that, it was crazy. Like, it was absurd. Like, you don't imagine that your team, the home team, wins in overtime, like, on home ice. Like, there's Sidney Crosby will be a guy. He'll be a god amongst men for the rest of his life because of that goal. It's crazy. Like we're really good battles with the U.S. and, you know, we got it done, and that was just a huge moment for Canada. Like, I just think you can't really think, and it's just, I think what the big thing with that goal is as well is that we now, like, we might, like, the opportunity to now have that happen again may not come around because the NHL's not really in on the Olympics anymore because they don't have any benefit to sending players to go do the Olympics. Mm-hmm. So, for example, we missed 2018 and we sent scrubs out there. So we will never, like, you'll never have the opportunity to see this high level talent until Gary Bettman basically isn't the commissioner. So it was just, it was a huge moment for this decade and for the country, and I just, like, literally, like, his stuff is in the Hall of Fame. Like, it was there, like, instantaneously. Like, they're like, yeah, this is
a monumental hockey moment of all time.
So number 2, we have the Cavs reverse the 3-1 lead. This personally, is just, it was an amazing moment for me. Like, I feel like this was, for a LeBron fan like myself, just to see him come back and, like, how much it meant for him to win in Cleveland and with that team and who they had to come back against. Like, it was a 73-9 Warriors. This was a team that was steamrolling through the playoffs, and then LeBron and Kyrie really put the Cavs on their back, and they did a phenomenal job making sure that they did what they had to do. And obviously, you know, they were down 3-1, really tight games, and then, you know, Game 5, LeBron and Kyrie both dropped 41. Game 6, much of the same. Game 6, Draymond Green was suspended, so a lot of Warriors fans will say, oh, you know, we missed Draymond, and that's why we lost the game. But at the end of the day, that clutch shot by Kyrie, the clutch block by James, it was something that, you know, led to them being able to come back from 3-1, which had never ever been done
in the final
in the NBA. So it was that's why that one is number 2, and I just think that's a huge moment in basketball.
The block on Andre Iguodala to allow Kyrie Irving to hit the shot to go up by 3. Then LeBron hits one free throws as the game's winding down to put them up by 4 and basically ice the game. It's truly remarkable that that's the first time in NBA history that a team has come back from a 3-1 lead in the NBA final, because the Warriors came back from 3-1 lead in the conference finals to overcome OKC. And listen, if the Golden State Warriors win that game, they are the greatest NBA team of all time. But it remains the 72-10 Jordan Bulls of the 95-96 season, I think it is, because they got a championship along with that record. And the Warriors will now forever remain the greatest regular season team of all time, so the greatest team of all time, because of moments like the block, because of that Kyrie Irving shot. And personally, that is the greatest game of basketball I have ever seen in my life. And a lot of people will say the same. We did a while back, there was a greatest games of all time podcast on where this was one of my big ones, because this is my favorite basketball game of all time. I remember watching that fourth quarter, it was a stunning game to watch. Complete remarkable. But we move on. The number one moment of the decade, 2010 to 2019, the greatest sporting moment of the decade is Kawhi Leonard's Game 7 buzzer beater against the Philadelphia 76ers, that in tandem with the championship run. It is the first time in NBA history that a playoff series has been won by a buzzer beater in a Game 7. That shot was everywhere. That play was everywhere. Kawhi gets it on the inbound, on the dribble, past Ben Simmons to meet Joel Embiid, smothered by Joel Embiid as he throws up the looping deep two-pointer. It hits the rim 4 times before dropping, sending Toronto to the conference final. They would eventually go on to win their first NBA title in franchise history. That shot is one of the most clutch shots in NBA history. It is arguably, I know Ray Allen's shot won most clutch shot of the decade, and I agree with that because they were losing when he hit that and it was NBA Finals, but this is a close second for me because the Raptors may have lost in OT of that game the way Philadelphia was playing, but the Raptors get to the conference finals, reverse a 2-0 deficit to win 4-2, and get all the way to the NBA Finals where they win in 6. We know how special that run was. We know how special Kawhi Leonard was. One of the all-time great playoff performances, and it's all from that one shot, that Game 7 shot. I remember you and me watching in my basement going crazy for that moment.
Yeah, it was wild. It was, man, I fully agree that this is the number one moment. I don't think, from a Canadian standpoint, it's just, this is the biggest thing that ever happens to the country. We've never won a national championship like this, where we've been so against the odds in a very, very long time. You know what I mean?
Since 93. Last time we won a championship.
So, and just the fact that we now, look what it led to. We, got a Christmas game. We got nationally televised a little bit more. So it led to us having to get that respect after being disrespected. We were picked to lose against Orlando.
By some. Yeah, some people legitimately thought that Orlando were going to win that series after they won Game 1.
Yeah.
Orlando did not win another game.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where now I feel like we're going to get that respect. And it's a good thing for the country and the Raptors and the organization. It just exposed us to, everyone can now see how well run we are as an organization and what it means. It was a huge moment.
Look at the way people look at Masai Ujiri now.
Yeah.
They think he is the cornerstone of NBA executives. He is the best. Because look what he's done. But without this shot, without that none of this happens. Kawhi doesn't win Finals MVP. It's remarkable. And I know we're talking about what it does for Canadians, what it does for Toronto, but on a worldwide level, that shot was everywhere. And like I said, this is the only Game 7 buzzer beater in NBA history.
Yeah.
Right? To win the game. It's definitely, like, when we made this list, had to be my number one on the list.
No,
the best moment of the decade.
There was no contest, so I 100% agree.
Thank you for listening to the Greatest Moments of the Decade podcast. Me and Deshaun had a really good time putting together the list and the video. Like it on YouTube. If you like the video, you can let us know if we missed out any moments on Twitter or Instagram at AmateurHourPDC. Follow us on Spotify, and we post every single day on this podcast. So keep coming back for the daily content to keep you up with the sporting world. We'll see you again tomorrow.